Hi everyone, I'm Seth, and welcome to Thrift Store Tech. Something I love looking for at the clearance center or other thrift stores are old cell phones. I just love looking through them sometimes and seeing what they can do, especially ones that predate smartphones, just to see what they were capable of. And I've got a fun one that I want to share with you. This is kind of a follow-up to the last video I posted about the LG Migo, and that's this little guy. Now, when I first saw this, I just saw it in a bin at a glance and I thought, is that an iPod? Because it didn't look like any kind of an iPod I'd seen before. And when I got a closer look, I saw it was by LG. It sells Altel on it. So that's when I realized it was a cell phone. And I'm still looking at it going, well, how does this even work? And then I flipped it open and found the keypad. So this is actually quite an interesting little gadget. I've had it for maybe about 3 or 4 weeks now, and it's working surprisingly well and holding a charge. So let's take a deeper look at it. So this little guy is called the LG Rhythm Phone, model AX585. It was first announced in October of 2008 and was released the following month in November of 2008. At the time, it had a retail price of $120 with a contract with either Altel or US Cellular. As you can see, this one is from Altel. There were also some rebate programs available that would drop the cost down to $80 after those rebates were claimed. So that $120 with contract price, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics inflation calculator, would be equal to about $181 today or $121 after the rebates. And it's kind of hard to believe that this phone is pushing 17 years old and still works as well as it does, not to mention the condition it's in. Somebody really took some good care of this little guy. So let's take a look around the phone before we turn it on. On this side here, we have our volume up and down buttons. We have a lock button to lock up the home screen when it's not in use, and a charging port under this cover here, which it uses a micro USB charger. And it was great the first time I charged it because, as you can see here, right on the back, here's the battery that it came with. I'm assuming that this battery is original to it, and since I charged it weeks ago, it's held its charge even with some use. And on the back, we also have a 1.3 megapixel camera. All the professional photographers are shaking in jealousy right now. And along the other side, we have a play pause button and a button to access the camera function. On the top, we have a 3.5 millimeter headphone jack and a micro SD slot. And anyone who's not quite familiar with this era of phone might be asking themselves, well, where's the power switch? Because there's no power switch on the sides. And to be perfectly honest, I did that too. But if we open it up, we'll see, and this was common for phones of this era, that the power switch is also the end call switch on the keypad. So let's go ahead and power this little guy on. There we go. Okay. And as you can see, it starts up with the Altel wireless screen. A little bit of music and a little light show around the wheel. Oh, there we go. I was about to say that'll be coming, but there it is. And of course, once it gets into its menu, it's searching for service, which it's not going to find any because it's not active. But when we press the unlock key on the side, there we go. We now can access the menu. We can access that by touching the little round circle here in the center because that's actually a touch screen. It's not quite as sensitive as I might like it to be. And if we go into there, we can get through the whole menu settings. You can up the keyboard. You can open up the keyboard and access things by their number. Ooh, went a little too far ahead. Don't know how well you can see that, but like number 1 is messaging, so I could click on there to get into messaging. Of course, this is somebody else's phone, so I'm not going to be showing off any messages. But I could also use the keypad and just type the corresponding number, like 2 for the Altel shop, which it's probably going to say I can't access it because the phone is not active. And for as interesting as this phone is, yes, exit. For as interesting as this phone is for the time and the features it has, I have not found a way to connect it to Wi-Fi, which I thought was just kind of strange because this thing also has Bluetooth connectivity as well as the usual cell phone connectivity. And I just love the way that it lights up with the red on the white when it's unlocked. Oop. These are little touch buttons and they can be surprisingly sensitive. The scroll wheel also works as a D-pad, which is a bit faster than scrolling if we go into the menu. But you can also scroll it, and you'll have that little light chasing you around. And I did find out in the settings you can change this light to blue or red, whichever you prefer. Personally, I like the red better. And I know that this also came in a black case with the red and blue lights. And there was also a version that came out in the pink color, which I'm not sure if those had red and blue lights, but I believe they did. And of course, most of these functions aren't going to work because this isn't active, but the one I'm excited about the most is the music function, which I just got into. And as you can see on the screen, we have, there we go. I forgot there was a shortcut key right there in the shape of a musical note. But on the screen right now, you can see we have all songs, playlists, artists, albums, genres, settings, and so on. And this is really where this little phone shines, because it was made, well, basically to impersonate the iPod, if that's not obvious. Now, I'm a big fan of the iPod, and I have found 3 or 4 of them while thrifting that have been in varying conditions, and I was gifted one by a gentleman who I bought some other electronics from, and that is currently my music player for work, but this has a slight chance of actually replacing that. Let's just unlock there. Okay. Now, this phone, like I said, is where it really shines because it was built to be a music-focused device. There we go. And if I go on to there, I've got a list of songs. I've got maybe 100 on here right now. So, and among the other features, it does also have an FM transmitter, so you could transmit it to your radio in the car, and Bluetooth capability to attach to earbuds. Now, of course, most of the music that I have on here is copyrighted, so I'm not going to be able to play that for you, but I did grab a couple of tracks from the YouTube music library. So I'm just going to go down to find one of those. And again, I'm using the scroll wheel, but I could also use the D-pad function of that. Alright, that's one that is from the YouTube music library. And I'm just going to go ahead and put that on and play a little bit with it so you can see what it can do. And as you can see, I can raise up the volume on the side. And it doesn't exactly play very loudly with the little speaker in there, but of course plugging into some headphones, it sounds a lot better. And something that I thought was cool with this wheel too is that you can scroll backwards and forwards through the song. So here we are at 7 or 8 seconds. There we are at 1:45. And I can go back to about 52 seconds. And I love how this little indicator goes from right to left, because it's not really the way I'm used to seeing anything work with this kind of thing. And if this doesn't time out and go into lock, I can use the touchscreen there as the play pause button. If we go ahead and lock it, right there, I believe we can still use the play pause button. Oh, I lied. Cannot use the play pause button. But you can open up the phone to unlock it, which will allow you to use that play pause button. Close it up. It's locked again until we unlock it. And even while it's playing, if the phone goes into standby, it will still keep playing. I can also exit out of music mode, and I have the choice to keep playing music or not. Let's keep it playing. And now back here, I can go back to my main menu, and I still have the music playing. Or I can jump back into the music menu mode. And in some respects, like size, I feel like this kind of outclasses the iPod in a way, because we have our multifunction device, we have the music, and we have the phone, whereas we're used to that today, but that wasn't all that common back then, not with a decent player anyway. But the point where the iPod definitely wins in this situation is the amount of onboard storage, because by default this only comes with 128 megabytes worth of storage on board, and it's expandable to 16 gigabytes with the SD card, or the micro SD card rather. I have an 8 gig card in there because I did not have anything really smaller than a 16 apart from that. But I know you're probably thinking, well, that's next to nothing, and by today's standards, it kind of is. But at the moment, I have about 115 songs on here, and that's not even taking up an entire gigabyte at that rate. So at that rate, I could probably put between 700 and 800 songs, give or take, on here on that one 8 gigabyte micro SD card and have plenty of music to keep me going. But I suppose the big question that most of you would have is why even bother with an MP3 player in the first place when we have smartphones and streaming services? And my answer to that is that sometimes I don't want the music I'm listening to run down my phone battery, and other times it would allow me to have music in a device that if I lost, I'm not going to lose a lot of sleep over it. Battery and all, it only weighs about 5 ounces, which means at the Goodwill Clearance Center that I go to, which charges by weight, I paid about 65 cents for it. And as I mentioned, the battery has a pretty good life, especially considering its age. And I would say 65 cents is a pretty good price for this kind of basic music player, even if the phone is not functional because it's not connected to anything. Not to mention the fact that having an old phone like this that most people would consider completely worthless is a pretty good deterrent to it being stolen. Oh, okay. I was worried it was going to go into another copyright track, but this is another YouTube track. So let's just take a look at when it powers down. Let's just hold down the power button. Keep playing music. No. And there we go with our All Tell Heart, our little light show, and off. Certainly goes on and off a lot faster than my smartphone does for loading all the apps that it has. I hope you enjoyed this little look at the LG Rhythm phone with me. You know, I love doing these kind of short videos just to share some of my interesting tech store finds with you. Have you had any good thrift store tech finds lately? If so, I'd love to hear about it in the comments below. If you like this video, be sure to give a like and a subscribe, as it really helps the channel to grow, and I have several other videos showcasing other tech that I have found through thrifting, and several in the works. So thanks for joining me, and I'll see you next time.